Today for our math lesson, we will be going over our practice book pages 377 and 378. Please make sure that you pause this video and have your practice book ready to go with a pencil that's sharpened and ready to write. Once you have that, then you can press play. Now that you have your practice book ready to go, we are going to jump right back in to using decimals, and today we are going to be extending our place value chart into the thousandths. So let's just review for a moment what we already know about our place value chart. First of all, we know that when our decimal point goes in here, we say the word and. The word and represents our decimal point, and we know that everything on the left side of the decimal point is bigger than 1, and everything on the right side of the decimal point is less than 1. In our picture here, you can see at the bottom that they have a couple reminders for you, and that this is like $1 in the ones spot. Notice that I have an S in my ones spot. My next place value over is tens. And in that same way, I just have a regular S. So this place value here is your tens spot. Then I've got my hundreds. And we're expanding today into thousands. Notice when I'm on the left side of the decimal, I'm always ending with that S, and I'm talking about whole numbers. In this very far left-hand corner, I have $1,000. That's a whole $1,000. That's a lot of money. And notice that I'm representing that with 1,000 over 1 as my denominator. As we move to the right side of the decimal point, we are getting into numbers that are less than 1. So when I go to the right side of the decimal point, all of a sudden, I'm adding my THS, my THS, and my THS, and I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Last time, we talked about how the tenths spot is represented by a dime, like 10 cents, a whole dime. The hundredth spot can be represented by a penny. So 1/100th is just 1 penny. Today, we need to talk about the thousandth spot. And the thousandth spot is 1/10 of a slice of a penny. That's how little it is. It's less than 1 penny. I would have to cut your penny into little pieces in order to get into my thousandths spot. So let's move down to 2 and 3. When I'm talking about number 2 and 3, they're asking for equivalent numbers of hundredths and thousandths. Now, when we're making equivalent numbers, moving up into the hundredths and the thousandths, all I need to do is start adding my zeros. So I'm going to take number 2 and I'm going to put it in my place value chart down below. It has 0 and 2 tenths. Notice they have this tenths here, and I say that because that's my last number in the last place value spot. If I wanted to create an equivalent number or equal number in the hundredth spot, well, how would I represent 2 dimes if I wanted to represent them with pennies? Well, if I wanted that to be the same value, then I would add a 0 because 20 pennies represent 2 dimes. So 0 and 20 hundredths. In the same way, if I wanted to create a thousandths that's equivalent, I know some of you guys know exactly where I'm going to add another 0. And I would read that 0 and 200 thousandths. Remember, I always say the number of the last place, the value of the last number there. So 200 thousandths. I want you to pause this video and I want you to try number 3 on your own, finding the equivalent number of the hundredths and thousandths. Then press play to see how you did. Let's see how you did. If you did it correctly, the equivalent number for 9/10 is 90 hundredths and 900 thousandths. Now, you guys are welcome to cut out the pieces, the numbers that you have in your practice book, and play around creating numbers here in your place value chart. It's big enough and the numbers will fit correctly. You can even practice saying those numbers out loud to a friend, to your mom or dad, or maybe even to a sibling. If you like to play school, this would be an awesome thing to do with your play students. Let's turn the page and look at the next couple numbers. Number 4, 5, 6, and 7 have the directions that say read and write each number as a decimal. Now, 4th graders, I know this is going to feel a little bit silly, but it's really important that you guys practice saying these fractions out loud. So let's do the first one together. If I'm looking at number 4 and I want to read that out loud, I want you to read it with me. 6 and 3/100ths. Notice I put my and between my whole number and my fraction. Now let's write that as a decimal. 6 and, do I have any tenths? Nope. Do I have any hundredths? Yep. I have 3/100ths. Let's move over to number 5. Pause this video and see if you can read this number out loud. Then press play and see if you got it right. If you read this number correctly, you should have read 12 and 705 thousandths. Now let's write it. 12 and 705 thousandths. Notice my 7 is in my 10th spot, my 0 is in my 100th spot, my 5 is in my 1000th spot, which is why I say thousandths as I'm reading the word. I want you guys to try number 6 and 7 on your own and see how you do. Pause this video and then press play when you're ready to check your work. Number 6 is a bit challenging. I'm hoping that you got it correct. Let's see how you did. If you read it out loud, you should have read 41 and 4 thousandths. Let's write that as a decimal. I have 41 wholes. Do I have any tenths? Nope. Any hundredths? Nope. Any thousandths? Yep. 4 thousandths. Give yourself a star if you got it right. Now let's try number 7. If you read number 7 correctly, you should have read 7 and 9/10ths. 7 is my whole number and represents my decimal. Do I have any tenths? Oh wait, yes I do. I've got 9/10ths, so I'm going to put 9 in my 10th spot. My next set of directions says read and write each decimal as a mixed number. So now, instead of writing the decimal, we need to write the fraction. So for number 8, I'm going to read that out loud and I want you to read it with me. Ready? Here we go. 26 and 312 thousandths. Remember, my 2 is in my thousandth spot, which means I need to read thousandths as my last place value. Let's write that as a fraction. 26 wholes. 312 is my numerator. And thousandths is my denominator. Let's try number 9. 2 and 1/10. Hopefully you read that with me. If not, let's say it one more time. 2 and 1/10. If you're able to read these numbers correctly, most likely you'll easily be able to write the mixed number as well. You should have 2 wholes and 1 out of 10. 1/10. Just like we did for 6 and 7, I'd like you to pause this video and try 10 and 11 on your own. When you've tried them, then push play, and I'll see if you got it correct. Now that you've given them a try, let's see how you did. Read with me number 10. 3 and 88 hundredths. If you wrote this as a mixed number correctly, you should have written 3 as your whole number, 88 as your numerator, and 100 as your denominator. Give yourself a star if you got that right. Now let's read number 11 with me. And when I'm asking you to read it with me, I actually mean you need to be using your vocal cords. Ready? Here we go. 8 and 450 thousandths. Be careful. They put the 0 here, so I'm going to read it as thousandths, even though we know that 8 and 45 hundredths is the same thing. So if you wrote this correctly as a mixed number, you would write 8 and 450 thousandths. If you wanted to write this one as a mixed number, just as an extra challenge, you would say 8 and 45 hundredths. Give yourself a star if you got your mixed number correctly. Now they want you to read each word name and write a decimal for each word. So this time they've put it in word form. It'll be important for you guys to remember the different types of forms. First we had decimals, which is pretty simple to remember. Then I said mixed numbers, which you should be thinking fraction, fraction, fraction. A mixed number is a fraction. Now I have word names or word form. I might ask you on a lesson checker quiz to write something in word form, and you will need to be able to write out the words. Let's do 12 and 14 together. Number 12 says 5/10. Ooh, I don't have any and there, so I know that and I'm ending with a THS. So I know that I'm talking about numbers that are less than 1 whole. So I have no whole number, a decimal point, and then 5 in my 10th spot. Number 14 reads 10 and 2 hundredths. I see my and. Everything on the left side is a whole number, so I've got 10 and 2 hundredths. Do I have any tenths? Nope. Do I have any hundredths? Yep. Try number 13 and 15 by yourself. Pause the video until they're done, and then come back and see how you did. Now that you've tried number 14 and 15, or 13 and 15, let's see how you did. Number 13 should be 9. I have nothing in the tenths, nothing in the hundredths, 1 in thousandths. Number 16 should be 6. Nothing in the tenths, nothing in the hundredths, 8 in my thousandths. The last form that we're going to be talking about today is expanded form, and I actually want you to cross out the example because I don't like the way that the book does the expanded form. I want to show you how I would like you to do your expanded form. When I'm looking at the number 14 and 25 hundredths, I want you to break it apart into place values. So 10 plus 4 plus, now remember, I'm going into my tenths, 2 plus, I have nothing in my tenths now, and I have 5 in my hundredths. Do you see how I split that up into each one of my place values here, making it expanded form? So I'm expanding it out and getting my tenths and my tens, my ones, my tenths, and my hundredths. Let's look at number 17 and try and do it there. Our biggest place value here is your hundredths, so I'm going to split that all by itself. 300 plus 20 plus, now you can put 0 as your ones, or because there's nothing in the one spot, or you can just simply skip it. 0 and 4/10. Once again, you can put 0 here, but there's no value there, so you can skip it. 0 and no tenths, no hundredths, 1. Whoops, and I put a comma there instead of a plus. There we go. Now that I've given you a few examples of expanded form, see if you can do number 19, and then check your work. Pause the video, do number 19 now. All right, let's see how you did. So I have 1,000 plus 80 plus 6 plus 9/10. Hopefully you got that right. The last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to work on a few word problems. Now remember, word problems can be tough, but we have tools to help us with our word problems. Just like we've practiced in the past, when you guys see an important number, underline it or circle it. And when you see the question, you can highlight it. Let's start on number 20. A new container of hobby beads contains 1,000 beads. I like to square things. Sarah has 1 new container and 14 leftover beads. What decimal number represents the number of the container that Sarah has? That's my question. I'm going to highlight it and read it one more time. What decimal number represents the number of containers Sarah has? Let's reread and see if we can figure that out. A new container of hobby beads contains 1,000 beads. Sarah has 1 new container and 14 leftover beads. What decimal number represents the number of containers that she has? Well, it told me that she has 1 whole container, so I'm going to put that before my decimal. Then she has 14 out of the 1,000 from her last container left over. I know I want my 14 to end in my thousandth spot, so I'm going to make little tabs. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Now I need to write 14, so my 4 ends up in my thousandth spot. That means I need to hold this place. How do I hold a place again? Oh yeah, I put a 0 in there. The decimal number that represents the number of containers Sarah has is 1 and 14 thousandths. Let's look at number 2. As I'm reading, square or circle the numbers and highlight the question. A new container of hobby beads contains 1,000 beads. Hey, that sounds familiar. Ria has 2.5 new containers. Write 3 different decimals to represent the number of containers Ria has. I'm going to square my 2.5, and I'm going to highlight my question. Write 3 different decimal numbers to represent the number of containers Ria has. Well, I know she has 2 wholes, so I'm going to try and make 1 to begin with. So 2 whole containers. Well, I know that half of 1,000 is 500, so I could say 500 thousandths. Pause this video and see if you can come up with 2 more decimal numbers that are equivalent or equal to 2 and 500 thousandths. Then press play. Hopefully you chose the easy route and got rid of some of those zeros. 2 and 50 hundredths is equivalent, and 2 and 5 tenths is also equivalent. Great job listening today. If there are any practice book questions that you have not completed yet, please make sure that they are completed before you start your homework. Your homework pages today are on Schoology. They're pages 189 and 190. Please fill them out on Notability and submit them as an assignment. Have a great day.